Oh,
Yeah.
okay. We are live.
Hmm.
We are live. So, Code Keepers, we're in for a great show today. This is Precise Thinking. Now, I know you're thinking it's been a while since we've done a Precise Thinking episode. True.
Like I said, like Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, do for self or suffer the consequences. How the hell do you make the CIA boy the hero when we know what the history has been between the CIA and Africa? Only when the father makes his transition to the ancestral realm of the Agun does the son truly become a man.
In the house. Hey, the court case was dismissed. The attempt on President Trump's life wasn't successful. But our agenda is still alive. So make sure we stay on code. Hey, brother Zumbi, man, you were sharing with us earlier that this is nothing new, nothing new. Them and I saying nothing new. This is nothing new when it comes to the situation with attempts on the lives of presidents. Why don't you build on that, brother?
Yeah, when you deal in arenas of power, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine this morning. I was explaining to her that I think Trump got a serious wake-up call with this attempt on his life. Whatever may have worked when he was in the real estate game doesn't work in this arena of power, because there are elements and there are people who are willing to put your lights out to maintain status quo. Okay.
Check.
So this may be a case of humble pie that Trump just received. Now, I'm not sitting up here trying to say anything ill will or anything like that. I just want people to understand, when you get into arenas of power and people are willing to do anything and everything to hold on to that power, even to the point of assassination. You know, I have a saying that assassination is the most extreme form of censorship.
Ooh.
Okay.
Okay. Check.
So and plus we also have to understand, now there are some things about this case that really, as Brother Coakley would tell us, it doesn't pass the smell test. All right. How are you going to tell me that a 20-year-old boy can get past the type of beef up security that you're supposed to have and be able to get a couple of shots off? All right. Now, let me explain. Okay. Trump is a former president, right?
True.
Okay. Now, what do former presidents get?
Let me see. They get, is it Secret Service for life?
Exactly. So, if you're going to be a former president, anywhere and everywhere you go, there's security protocol that's supposed to be ahead of you to make sure that all threats or any potential threats are eliminated. So who dropped the ball here? Was it Secret Service? Was it NSA? Was it local law enforcement authorities? Because there should have been, you should have felt a military presence at that event with him being a former president.
Okay. Now, that's intriguing, bro. That's intriguing, because when I looked at the situation, and let me say from the outset, I know you made your statement earlier. I feel and I pray for the people who were impacted by this act of violence. You know, I pray and I hope that those who were impacted live better lives and receive the help or the solace or the anything that they need, because that's a traumatic experience. You know, being shot at is a traumatic experience.
Right.
All right. So I give my blessings and prayers to those who were impacted, whoever they might be. When I looked at the situation and I heard about it, I was DJing and my wife let me know about it. I thought to myself, it sounds like a non-professional. And it also sounds like there were some slips, like you mentioned, in the protocols. But the other thing, the thing that stands out for me, brother, the thing that stands out for me is I wasn't surprised.
No.
This is part and parcel to America's history, bro. This is what happens. Every president in the United States has had an attempt, and we're not going to use some of the harsh words. So we're just going to use the word attempt. Every president of the United States has had an attempt, right? So this is nothing new. And what I understand from you, brother, this is not the first time that President Trump has had an attempt. You mentioned that he got a threatening text message from another. Talk about that, brother. I don't know about that.
This was in the New York Post when Trump was on his first campaign for president. Right. He actually received a death threat text from El Chapo.
Woo!
Okay. Where by the time they reached Virginia, they had to beef up his private security along with Virginia state troopers and other local law authorities. You see. So that's why I say when you look at this, and with Trump being a former presidential candidate, somebody somewhere dropped the ball. Now, there are those of us in the underground who may say that it was an inside job. I think that's plausible. Others are trying to figure out what is the motive. Now, the one thing that we can rule out, and history can teach us this, let's kill the lone assassin theory. History has always shown us that.
Why don't we not use that K word when we're on YouTube?
Well, what I'm getting at here is history has shown us that assassinations are what I call joint ventures.
Okay.
All right. So there's no such thing as a quote unquote lone assassin. And that's why you have to look at, and in fact, I know we had done a show maybe about a year or so ago, and there's certain questions that come up when we talk about assassination. And I always like to do a cerebral approach to assassination. So the 7 questions go this way. Number 1, why was the target eliminated or neutralized? Or in this case, why was there an attempt to neutralize or eliminate the target? That's number 1. Number 2, what threat did the target pose? Number 3, who has motive or probable cause? Number 4, who, in this case, who would have become the direct and or indirect beneficiaries of the attempted assassination or execution? Number 5, who has the power to execute the plot? Number 6, who has the power to cover it up? And then number 7, what role does an assassination attempt or an assassination play in the maintenance of what I would call quote unquote national security? So when you talk about I kind of look at assassinations the same way as someone taking an antibody. So if there's a virus inside the host, let's say a nation. Okay. So now you can use an assassination to kill whatever is attempting to infect the host, if you will.
Intriguing. Okay. All right. So if we take those 7 questions, how does that feather out with the information that we've been given so far that the 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 perpetrant was a 20-year-old
Mm-hmm.
who had been quote unquote bullied for a lot of his time in high school,
Right.
who had no formal military weapons training,
Mm-hmm.
who was a registered Republican,
Mm-hmm.
whose father was a libertarian, whose
Mm-hmm.
mother was a Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
and who may have given $15 to some. I mean, it's crazy how they're making a big deal out the fact that he gave $15 to some progressive organization. But
Mm-hmm.
so how, with that information that we have,
Right. Mm-hmm.
how does that address those questions?
Well, we know that the information will continue to come out, but what I want the audience to begin to start doing is to look at this in a cerebral manner. And that's why I posed those questions based on when you look at the history of assassinations. And we can pull any assassination or assassination attempt you want to pull. You can pull the Kennedy brothers, Malcolm, Martin, um, Chris Hani. We can go on down the list. Okay. So it's about creating, I guess you would say, a formula to where we can take any assassination attempt and run it through so that way we can begin to be more precise in how we see things. And from what has come out so far, this isn't the first time we've seen this movie.
No, this is a series,
Okay.
repeat series.
I mean, we can pull out one thing that comes to mind when we mention the individual in question. Take it back to the DC sniper.
Oh, John Muhammad.
Okay. And notice how there's similarities that are coming out. Okay.
All right. So John Muhammad, I'm not seeing the similarities between the
Well,
God body John Muhammad and this 20-year-old.
what I'm getting at is this. And again, it runs back through a formula. You mean to tell me that somebody can just show up out of nowhere, and be able to do some of the things that they've been able to do without any formal training or any, I'm just saying there's questions that have to be put on the table. And this is where, as you know, kindergarten teachers and elementary school teachers used to tell us to put our thinking caps on.
Well, you know what? When I think about it, while many of our youth are TikToking, twerking, and trapping, a lot of the youth, similar to the vein of the shooter, are going to the ranges and going out in the woods with their parents, particularly their fathers, grandfathers, and uncles. And they're learning how to use AK-47s. They're learning how to use long-range rifles. They're learning how to use handguns. You know, they're going to the firing range. So, like I said, while our kids are twerking, trapping, and TikToking, our peers, their children, are learning how to use firearms.
Oh, and by the way, I'm going to throw this in for the record. The weapon in question that was used in the assassination attempt was an AR-15.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Cool.
So it's like, you know how and that's why I said the reason why we have to really be cerebral in this is because we don't want to allow media to create a narrative that people just follow without critical thinking, asking critical questions about how you can have this type of security breakdown against an individual who was a former president.
Okay, let's put a pin in that because I want to look. This is precise thinking, ladies and gentlemen. So, you know, Brother Zumbi Shawala is going to give his diatribe and information that he's pulled together on a particular topic. I just want to re-emphasize that President Trump is alive, and so is our agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a lot of people wrapped up and caught up in the hullabub of, did you see what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that the court case was dismissed?
Right.
J.D. Vance was chosen as the vice presidential running mate. What's Biden going to do?
Right.
Biden is slurring his words. He's mixing up names.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look, Trump is alive. His court case was dismissed.
Mm-hmm.
And so is our agenda. We're dismissing all the things that are not going to keep us on code, the same way Trump's court case was dismissed. The same way that President Trump is alive, so is our agenda. So we got to make sure that, we're focused on talking about reparations for the descendants of American slaves. We're talking about justice system reform. We're talking about police reform, which is punish the bad police, right? And we're got to talk about no group or person is above the law. These are the same things that we have been fighting for since 1863. So, no, Trump's still alive. Cool. Reparations is still on the table. Justice system reform is still on the table. Punishing bad police officers is still on the table. No one is above the law is still on the table. So, Trump's court case is dismissed, and we're going to dismiss anything that gets us off code. Trump is alive, and so is our agenda. Back to our regularly scheduled information session. Minister Zumbi.
Okay. So, and to make sure that everybody is still on the same page and still on the same quote, again, I emphasize this is a very critical time for us to make sure that we don't get distracted, that we make sure that we keep the main thing the main thing.
True.
Okay. So when we sit back and we watch this, for lack of a better term, political theater unfold, what does that mean for African people?
It means we stay on code. That for me, it's easy. It's super duper easy.
But now here's another point, and I'll probably bring this up. I'll bring part of it up now, but another part in a future show. And this is not to be facetious or cynical or funny, but what specifically does that mean to be on code? Because, and here's what I'm getting at. I don't want us to think that spitting out phrases, cliches, or nursery rhymes is an actual code. If we understand what a code is, one of the definitions of a code is a system of laws. Case in point, when Pac and Dr. Mutulu Shakur sat down and put out the 26 principles of thug life, that was an actual code.
Right.
When the samurai laid out the 8 virtues of the Bushido, that is an actual code. So what do we mean when we say stay on code? It's not a nursery rhyme. It's not a cliche. And I think that this is a critical moment to where if we're going to tell the people to stay on code and be on code, what does that look like? Have we taken the time to sit down and write out a series of laws or principles or standards that are universal and transcend all schools of thought? Because I don't want us to get this Jesse Jackson syndrome where we got 70-year-olds talking about up with hope and down with dope.
Well, when it comes to our Black empowerment and the Get On Code platform, we simply say get on code, share the code, teach the code, become the code. Our code is empowerment. And so everything that we're focused on will put Blacks in better powered situations than we currently are, than we were. So I try to keep it really simple. If we want to go to the compensatory code that Neely Fuller wrote up, I love that. That's a great code, but I try to keep it simple. I'm a
Well,
I'm a person
I'm
that I had a hard time reading. I still do have a hard time reading. I may process a little slow, so I keep it simple.
okay. I guess
Empower.
because I'm at a yeah, I'm at a point. I guess I'm kind of where Dr. Amos Wilson is that I think it has to be more comprehensive because uh,
I
as
don't
we mature,
disagree.
yeah. So I'm saying as we mature, we must mature in our approach, in our process to things. So that's what I mean when we say these things and our people can be lazy. So that's why I said that we have to go beyond the punchline and the slogans and the cliches. When the whole thing came out about Black Lives Matter, I took it as an insult that you need a damn $20 t-shirt to tell you that you matter.
All right. Well, look, everybody's lazy. It's not just our people. All right.
But
Check.
in this
Check.
particular, yeah, but in this
And,
particular case,
all
okay,
right. So
in this
look,
particular case, if we're going to sit up here and talk about how we are going to be a free and sovereign and sophisticated and autonomous people, then we have to demonstrate that. Okay. And it can't be demonstrated when you're still operating at a kindergarten level. Okay. So, okay, it's fine. You have a slogan, but now what is beyond the slogan? What is beyond the cliche? What is beyond the punchline? So there has to be something that will outlive us. So we can tell people to be on code, but if anything happens to you or me, what's the blueprint for the people to follow?
that's a great question. That's a great question. And I think every different organization within us is probably going to come up with different codes. But there's going to be an area where there's a lot of overlap. And code keepers, if you want to pop in the show, hop in the show and give your thoughts, the code is on the screen. It should be in the chat. So click on that link and pop on and give us your thoughts on what the code might be. My thought, and what I've said over and over, and particularly with this particular show, is that we need to focus in this political time on reparations for the descendants of American slaves, justice system reform, police reform, which is punish bad police, and that no group or person is above the law. All right. So if we work on those four, we're really being on code. We're really being on code if we work on those four. So code keepers, if you have some thoughts, let us know. Hop on the show. We'd love to hear from you. I would love to debate with you if you say some crazy stupidity stuff. With that being said, tonight we're talking about this is expected. What happened with the attempt on President Trump's life is expected. Trump's court case was dismissed. So, the powers that be are really trying to make President Trump Teflon Don. They're not holding him responsible the way, Brother Zumbi, they would hold you and I responsible. If we were hiding documents that we weren't supposed to have and it was illegal and the police knocked down our door, the police took our documents that we were hiding. If that happened to you and I, we'd be in jail. But that court case was just dismissed today.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to have to stay on code. We're going to have, and if you want a really strong definition of what the code should be, I would say let's start with Neely Fuller's compensatory code for the Negro. I think that's a great code. It's still viable today.
Okay. So yeah, and like I said, I'm getting back into. In fact, let me make sure I give a proper definition since we're going to be in. Since we're going to be precise in our thought process, in our language, and in our actions. So here is what the term code means. It's a noun, and there's three definitions. I think I got this from dictionary.com is the source. So code means this. It is a system of words, letters, figures, or symbols used to represent others for brevity or secrecy.
Okay.
Number two, it's a system of laws. Number three, it is a standard of moral behavior. Now, that's from dictionary.com, and I'm kind of using this for the next book that I'm going to write. In fact, for those who really want to be African-centered, the Yoruba word for code is kudu, is Koodu.
Kudu. Stay on kudu.
Yes. Okay. So that's why I said when we say what is a code, when we tell people this, are we being congruent? In other words, are we taking the time to lay out something that anyone who is able to read a stop sign can follow? Okay. So
well,
this is what we mean.
Because when we look at Project 2025, when we look at President Trump's agenda, which is Agenda 47, those are codes that are really spelled out very well, easy to read, easy to understand. It's a thick book. I mean, it's a thick book, but I understand what you're saying, that we need that.
Okay.
We need that.
And the funny thing is, everybody was asking me about 2025. I said, why should I be worried about 2025 when you guys didn't even pay any attention to Rex 84 back in the 80s?
We didn't pay attention to who?
Rex 84, or what we used to call the King Alfred Plan.
Ooh.
Okay. So if we didn't pay any attention to the King Alfred Plan, where it was talking about rounding us up and putting us in concentration camps, why should we be worried about this now? And I'm not saying don't have concerns, but I just found it interesting how you ignored something that came out over 40 years ago, but now everybody is hyped up over this. And I said, what's really changed?
I think the thing that has changed is that a lot of people are worried because this is an election year. So Project 2025 became the next, Republican conservative boogeyman, if you will, something else to rally the base so that people will vote for the Democratic ticket. So, and I'm not saying that Project 2025 isn't the boogeyman that people are suggesting that it is.
But
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that I think that because this is an election year, and I'm not sure if the King Alfred Plan was part of the common language and common consciousness during an election year. But right now, people are just mixed up. They're just concerned about election.
But see, this is part of the problem where you don't have long-term thinking. So when you deal in arenas of power like this, okay, whether it's the King Alfred Plan, whether it's Project 2025, or whatever you want to deal with, okay, this isn't something that just came out overnight. How many years of research and thought and roundtables and meetings and funding went into developing, I think it's a 900-page document. And what I'm saying for African people is, where are our documents to ensure that our people will survive the 21st century and beyond? Okay, because if you're going to gain liberation, then you have to really start being able to sit down and think through your issues and come up with blueprints that your people can follow. What happened to the blueprint that was supposed to come out for the first Million Man March, where Milana Karenga wrote the mission statement? Okay, wasn't that supposed to be our sense of a blueprint?
And you know, the problem that accompanied that rollout was the churches and the Christian leaders were fighting against the Nation of Islam.
And see, this, yeah.
And so, yeah, we put our preference over a particular book and our preference over a particular religious practice in front of our liberation. So,
and
here in Hampton Roads, we had ministers saying, you know, that's the NOI thing. They don't like Jesus. They were saying a whole bunch of dumb stuff that was off code. It was not empowering, and it did not put us in a better position.
And that's why I said that there has to be what I call a universal code of conduct that cuts across all schools of thought.
You know what? So let's build it.
Okay. So, and I'll give you an example of what my next book is. It's entitled The Chicago Code. And basically what it is, it's a universal code of conduct for African men, which it does not require you to leave where you are. You can take the actual blueprint itself and incorporate it into what you already do. Okay.
So, okay, I love this. What does this have to do with the attempt on President Trump's life?
Well, you know, when we talk about staying focused, I kind of look at this assassination attempt as a distraction.
True.
Okay. So when you're supposed to be like a Clydesdale with blinders on, you don't want to be sidetracked by political theater or political circus. Okay. Because if you're going to have a laser-like focus towards what it is that you want to achieve, and you laid out those 4 points there, you cannot allow yourself to be distracted. Now, you can use that to teach lessons, but you don't want to be so wrapped up into it, because remember, for African people, it's a distraction. It really is a distraction, because we have to stay focused on whatever that prize is. The obstacle shows up when you take your eyes off the prize.
Which is the reason I keep reminding our people. And I wanted to continue reminding in this particular conversation that the court case about President Trump having illegal documents in his residence, when the government told him, don't take those, you better bring them back. You need to bring them back. You should have brought them back. We're going to have to come and get them. That court case has been dismissed. We cannot dismiss our agenda. President Trump is still alive, and so is our agenda. We need to stay on code and push for the reparations for the descendants of American slavery, for justice system reform, for police reform, which is punish bad police, and making sure that no person is, or entity or organization is above the law. So we got to push for those things. We have to stay focused. We have to stay on code. So I think that you're right, brother, where we may need to have a stronger, definitive statement on what our code of conduct, our Bushido is. Because I tell you what, it looks to me like the conservatives in America have that.
But it has to be a two-part situation, internal as well as external. So while you have, let's say, external objectives you want to achieve. So let's take those 4 points there. That's external. So now what are the internal things? You see, and I think and I don't have it with me. I may have lost it, but I would dare argue that what Dr. Fuller wanted to address in his United Independent Compensatory Code was more internal reparations in terms of how do we conduct ourselves with one another? What is the universal code of conduct in terms of how we deal with one another, regardless of where we are on the planet?
I say that we need to build. I like that. I like that.
And
I
the
like
reason
that.
And the reason I'm saying that is because, and part of the reason I'm writing this book, it's really for young brothers, because we found ourselves in situations to where when we go into other villages and we don't act as guests, we leave as fatalities in body bags because we don't know how to act. And so what my thing is that what is the universal code of conduct for how brothers should conduct themselves? So if me being here in the States, if I go to Brazil, how am I to conduct myself amongst African people in Brazil? Okay. And I'm saying that there's a universal code of conduct. Now, sure, there's going to be variances based on how the environment shapes things, but I'm saying that there has to be a universal code of conduct to where when we come, we pay the courtesy and respect of those inhabitants of that particular part of the world.
I say that. Hey, brothers and sisters, family members, code keepers, we've been doing a precise thinking episode where Minister Zumbi gets a chance to teach. So Zumbi, man, why don't you tell us about your book very quickly?
Okay, so the first book, I always got to reach for it here. So the first book is what I call the Gospel of Afro-Nomics Theology. Now, some people can call this a financial code for African people for the 21st century and beyond. This is like a 22 years of personal experience and research in the areas of business, economics, entrepreneurship, and finance. We need something that helps us address our unique economic challenges domestically and globally. In the beginning, I used to call it Rich Dad, Poor Dad meets Malcolm X's Gospel of Black Nationalism, because we need to begin to look at things through an African-centered lens. So that way we can begin to address things that will help improve and help transform our economic condition.
I say that. So make sure you pick, code keepers, make sure you pick up your copy of the Gospel of Afro-Nomics Theology. I'm telling you, when you read the book, you're going to look back at the people who are talking dumb stuff and you're going to do this. Once you read that book, you're going to be able to understand things like this. You're going to understand that the Federal Bureau of Investigation warned of white supremacists in law enforcement 10 years ago and did nothing. Mm-hmm. You're going to learn that, Noble Drew Ali said our plight will change when we change ourselves. You're going to learn about the great replacement theory. I mean, you're going to understand better. Not you're going to learn in that book, but you're going to understand better about the great replacement theory, And the other thing, after you purchase and read the book, or maybe before you purchase and read the book, we want you to check out this documentary.
Say that they are living paycheck to paycheck.
You will be wealthier.
My wife and I were flipping our first house.
When you shift the way you see things, then your life is going to shift.
Money is a tool for what you want. Money is not what you want. You don't want money.
So that goes to show that you don't have faith when you do not take your money and put it into those accounts to earn interest. When you're scared thinking that something is going to happen, God says, who are you trusting in? Because I'm the one that has created the money system.
Well, I then got offered $350 million for my company.
It says you owe about $538,000.
That the individual and the individual family unit is responsible for filling their own cups.
I went from being homeless and living on the street to owning properties in Baltimore.
And that's why I decided to start a bank.
This is something that Martin Luther King spoke about.
Stupid mistakes and failures, we continued stumbling forward.
Because the Black community, for the most part, had to go and rent.
All right, so make sure you check out generationalflip.com. That's generationalflip.com. Last words, good brother. You know, when we're dealing with the aftermath of the dismissal of the court case and the attempt on President Trump's life, what should we be focused on?
Well, I kind of take it back to something Brother Coakley always says, that we need to engage in what he calls Black futurology. You know, we always want to emphasize Black history and push the need for more Black historians, but where is the need, or where are the Black futurologists? Where are those of us who can look at things in the present and forecast the future, or begin to create a future for African people? So I think during this critical moment, we really need to be focused on what I call the science of Black futurology, is creating a future that is of, by, and for the African world community and its citizens. That's what the focus needs to be on during this critical moment.
All right, so stay focused, Code Keepers. Hey, as we always say, we love you. Stay on code. We out. Peace. Oh, that went interesting. That went in the interesting.